The throne room was built from bones. Not just any bones, but the skeletons of 100 different species. They were arranged in careful patterns along the walls, each one a trophy from a conquered world. The ceiling stretched high above, disappearing into shadows where more bones hung like chandeliers. Tay walked forward with calm steps. His boots clicked against the polished stone floor. Behind him, 5 other humans followed in a loose line. None of them wore chains. None of them had guards holding their arms. They simply walked into the throne room like guests arriving at a dinner party. On the massive throne sat King Varthex. He was 12 feet tall, covered in dark scales that gleamed like oil. His eyes were yellow with vertical slits. When he moved, muscles rippled under his armored skin. His talons, each as long as a human finger, rested on the arms of his throne. Those arms were made from the leg bones of something that must have been enormous. No guards? The king rumbled, talons drumming on bone. The sound echoed through the vast chamber. Tap, tap, tap. Each strike was deliberate, patient. Like a predator deciding whether to pounce or wait. Commander Skrull stood beside the throne. He was smaller than the king, but still towered over any human. His scales were a lighter gray, scarred from many battles. He shifted his weight, clearly uncomfortable. "They showed no resistance, my king," Skrull said. His voice was rough, angry. "When we boarded their vessel, they simply stood in their control room, waiting. The ambassador here," he gestured at Tay with one clawed hand, "requested an audience with you." Varthex leaned forward, his eyes fixed on Tay. "Requested?" "Yes, my king." The king's mouth opened slightly, showing rows of serrated teeth. It might have been a smile. It might have been a threat. With the Dracther, it was hard to tell the difference. Tay stopped at what he judged to be a respectful distance. Not too close, not cowering far away. Just right. He had studied every video of Dracther interactions they had in the ship's database during the 3-day journey here. He knew how they measured space and respect. "King Varthex," Tay said, bowing his head slightly. "Thank you for seeing us." Several of the Dracther nobles around the room hissed. Thanking a captor was apparently not normal behavior for prisoners. The king studied Tay in silence. His talons continued their steady rhythm on the bone throne. Tap, tap, tap. "You are either very brave or very stupid," Varthex finally said. "Which is it?" "Neither, I hope," Tay replied. "We are simply practical, practical." The king tested the word like it was something foreign. "You drifted into our territory. Your ship is now in our docking bay, torn apart by my engineers. You stand in my throne room, surrounded by the bones of species that resisted me. And you call yourself practical?" Tay allowed himself a small smile. "Yes, because resistance would have been pointless. Your ships outnumbered ours 12 to 1. Your weapons technology is at least a generation ahead of ours in several categories. Fighting would have killed my crew and accomplished nothing." Hannah stood behind Tay, her eyes moving constantly. She was looking at everything, recording it in her mind. The bone structure of the throne, the arrangement of guards, the social positions of the nobles. Every detail might matter later. "So you surrender," Varthex said. "We acknowledge reality," Tay corrected gently. "There's a difference." The king's talons stopped drumming. The sudden silence was somehow louder than the tapping had been. Every Dracther in the room tensed. "Explain this difference." Tay clasped his hands behind his back, a casual pose that made him look relaxed. "Surrender implies giving up. We haven't given up anything. We simply chose not to waste lives in a battle we couldn't win. Now we're here, talking to you. That seems more useful than floating dead in space." Commander Skrull hissed, a sound of pure anger. "You dare speak to the king with such?" Varthex raised one hand. silencing his commander instantly. His eyes never left Tay. You are an interesting creature. Small, soft, weak, and yet you stand before me without fear. Why? I didn't say I wasn't afraid, Tay said. Fear is sensible when facing a superior predator. But fear and panic are different things. Panic kills. Fear keeps you alert. Superior predator. Varthex seemed to enjoy the phrase. At least you understand your position. I understand many positions, Tay said. Predator, prey, diplomat, host, guest. Right now, you're trying to decide which position we occupy. Whether we're dangerous, useful, or just entertainment. The king's eyes widened slightly. It was the first crack in his imposing demeanor. You think you understand me? I think you didn't kill us immediately, Tay said. That means you're curious. Curiosity is something I understand very well. Varthex stood from his throne. The movement was sudden, powerful. He descended the bone steps and walked toward the humans. Each step made the floor tremble slightly. The other humans didn't move back. They stood their ground, watching him approach. The king stopped directly in front of Tay. He towered over the human, his shadow swallowing Tay completely. His breath smelled like metal and meat. Up close, his scales were like black mirrors, reflecting Tay's small form. You have courage, Varthex said quietly. Stupid courage perhaps, but courage nonetheless. What do you want, human? Our ship returned to us, Tay said simply. Repaired and fueled. Safe passage out of your territory. An agreement that this was a misunderstanding, not an act of war. The king laughed. It was a deep rumbling sound that came from his chest. Several nobles joined in, a chorus of predatory amusement. You ask for these things as if you have the right to demand them. I ask for them because they're reasonable, Tay said. And because I believe you're a reasonable king. I am a conqueror, Varthex corrected. I have crushed 200 worlds. What makes you think I'm reasonable? Because you're still talking to me? Tay said. Silence fell again. Varthex stared at the human for a long moment. Then he turned and walked back to his throne. He settled onto it, his talons resuming their drumming pattern. Tap, 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 tap. I will consider your request, Varthex said. While I do, you and your crew will be guests in my palace. You will be given quarters, food, anything you need. Thank you, Tay said. You will not leave those quarters without permission, Varthex continued. You will not attempt to communicate with your people. You will not cause trouble. If you do any of these things, I will have Commander Skrell remove your skin and add your bones to my collection. Do you understand? Perfectly clear. Varthex gestured to a group of guards. Take them to the East Wing, the Blue Chambers. See that they have everything they require. As the guards moved forward, weapons ready, Hana leaned close to Tay and whispered in Korean. He said guests, but he meant prisoners. I know, Tay whispered back in the same language. But prisoners with comfortable beds. We work with what we have. The humans were led out of the throne room. As they left, Tay glanced back once. King Varthex was watching them go, his talons still drumming on the bone armrest. His eyes were thoughtful now, calculating. Trying to solve a puzzle he didn't quite understand yet. That was exactly what Tay wanted. In the hallway, Mira walked close to Jiho. Did you see the guards' positions? She whispered. Counted them, Jiho replied. 15 visible, probably 10 more hidden in the alcoves. The ceiling heights? Approximately 40 feet in the throne room. These corridors are 20. Behind them, Yuna was watching the Drakthar guards' body language. The way they moved, how they held their weapons, the subtle signals they gave each other. Every detail was information. Every piece of information was potential leverage. Seok said nothing at all. He simply walked and watched, his face expressionless. But his eyes missed nothing. The blue chambers were indeed comfortable. 6 connected rooms with soft beds, running water, and wide windows that looked out over a city of black stone and red lights. The doors locked from the outside. As soon as they were alone, Tay gathered his crew. "We start observing everything," he said quietly. "Every guard rotation, every mealtime, every sound in the walls. We learned this place. How long do you think we have?" Hana asked. Tay looked out the window at the alien city below. "As long as the king stays curious. Our job is to make sure he stays that way. And if he stops being curious?" Tay asked. "Then we better have a very good backup plan," Tay said. "So let's not need one." Outside their doors, 6 Drakthir guards stood watch. Inside the rooms, 6 humans began the slow, patient work of turning a cage into an opportunity. The game had begun. The first week passed slowly. The humans fell into a routine that seemed simple on the surface. They woke when morning light filled their windows. They ate the meals that guards brought 3 times a day. They talked quietly among themselves. They slept when darkness came, but nothing was as simple as it appeared. Jiho made friends with the youngest guard. His name was Kreth, and he was barely past adolescence by Drakthir standards. His scales were still soft in places, not yet hardened by age and battle. He stood outside their door during the night shift, when the palace was quietest. "Do all humans talk as much as you?" Kreth asked one night. He had started asking questions after Jiho had complimented the edge on his blade. "Some talk more, some less," Jiho said through the small window in the door. "I talk just enough. My mother always said I could make friends with a stone if I tried hard enough." "Why would you want to be friends with a stone?" "It was a joke," Jiho explained. "It means I can talk to anyone, even your enemies?" Jiho smiled. "Especially my enemies. That's how they stop being enemies." Kreth shifted his weight, thinking about this. "The king says humans are strange. Commander Skrull says you're dangerous. What do you think?" The young guard looked through the window at Jiho. "I think you're the first prisoner I've ever met who asks me about my day." "Are we prisoners?" Jiho asked. "The king called us guests. Guests who can't leave." "That just makes us guests with poor timing," Jiho said. "Maybe we'll leave when the king decides we can. Until then, we're here. Might as well be pleasant about it." Kreth made a sound that might have been Drakthir laughter. "You are very strange." Through these conversations, Jiho learned the structure of the Drakthir language. He learned that guards rotated every 6 hours. He learned that the palace had 12 levels above ground and 5 below. He learned that Kreth wanted to be a ship commander someday, like his father had been before dying in battle against the Vrixian collective. Each piece of information was small. Together, they formed a map. Myra spent her time differently. She paced their rooms, counting steps, listening to echoes. When guards walked past their door, she timed their footsteps. She learned to identify individual guards by the sound of their gait. The heavy one was Skrull's second in command. The quick one was nervous. The limping one had an old injury to his left leg. At night, she lay on the floor with her ear pressed to the stone. The palace had rhythms, ventilation systems that hummed at specific frequencies, distant machinery that operated on schedules, water flowing through pipes. All of it told her about the building's structure. "There's a large empty space 3 levels below us," she told Tay one evening. "The echo pattern suggests a chamber at least 100 meters across." "Throne room?" Tay asked. "Maybe, or docking bay, hangar, something big and hollow." Yuna watched the guards' behavior with an anthropologist's eye. She noticed that they stood straighter when senior officers approached. They relaxed slightly after the officers left. They touched their weapon hilts when nervous. They tilted their heads when curious. The Dracthyr had a complex social structure. Dominance wasn't just about size or strength, though those mattered. It was about confidence, eye contact, voice tone. The way Varthex had descended from his throne to confront Tay, that was a dominance display, testing whether Tay would flee or freeze. They're like wolves, Yuna explained to Hana. Pack hierarchy. Alpha, Beta, Omega. Everyone knows their place. Which means they're predictable, Hana said. In some ways, yes. Hana had her own observations. Every meal they received told her something about Dracthyr biology. The meat was raw, full of proteins and iron. The vegetables were bitter, high in specific minerals. No sugars, no processed carbohydrates. Pure carnivore diet with some plant supplements. Their metabolism runs hot, she told Day. Notice how they're always moving? Even standing still, they shift their weight. They burn energy fast, which means they need to eat frequently. And they probably don't handle cold well. Their entire evolution happened in warm environments. Day nodded, filing this information away. As the team's medic, he noticed other things. One guard had a healing wound on his arm. Day had gestured to it, asking in simple words if it hurt. The guard had been surprised, but answered. 3 days later, Day asked again. The guard reported it was better. You remember my injury? The guard asked, suspicious. Of course, Day said. Healing is important. I'm a medical person. I notice these things. Soon, guards started mentioning small ailments to Day. A sore shoulder. A persistent cough. They listened, sometimes offered simple advice. Stretch more. Drink more water. Rest when possible. You care about our health? One guard asked, confused. Why wouldn't I? Day replied, pain is pain. Doesn't matter what species feels it. This was unusual to the Dracthyr. They cared about their own warriors, but showing concern for others was considered weakness. Yet here was this small human, genuinely interested in their well-being. It made them uncomfortable. It also made them talk more. On the 14th day, King Varthex summoned Taeg again. The throne room was less crowded this time. Just the king, Commander Skrell, and a handful of nobles. Tay walked in alone, his steps confident. Your people have been behaving well, Varthex said. No escape attempts. No violence. No trouble, as promised, Tay said. My guards report that you ask many questions. We're curious. It's human nature. The king's talons drummed on his throne. Tap, tap. What are you curious about? Everything. Your culture. Your history. How you built such an impressive empire. How you maintain order across so many worlds. You want to understand us. Understanding prevents conflict, Tay said. If we understand each other, we make better decisions. Varthex leaned back in his throne. Commander Skrell believes you're spies, gathering information to use against us. Information helps everyone, Tay said. The more we know about you, the less likely we are to accidentally offend you. The more you know about us, the easier it is to decide what to do with us. I have decided, Varthex said. You will stay here, indefinitely. Tay showed no reaction. May I ask why? Because you're interesting. In 60 years of conquests, I have never met prisoners like you. Most species beg or threaten or weep. You observe. You learn. You make friends with my guards. The king's eyes narrowed. What are humans? It was the question Tay had been waiting for. We're survivors, Tay said simply. On our world, we weren't the biggest. We weren't the strongest. We weren't the fastest. For most of our history, we were prey. Prey? Varthex seemed genuinely surprised. Yes, hunted by creatures larger and more dangerous than us. We survived by being smart. by adapting, by learning. You learn to hunt, eventually. But first, we learn to watch, to understand, to find patterns. We watched the predators that hunted us and learned their habits. When they slept, where they hunted, how they thought. Tay paused. Understanding your hunter is how you survive. The throne room was very quiet. Every Dracther was listening now. We also learned something else, Tay continued. We learned to work together. 1 human is weak. 10 humans together are dangerous. 100 humans together are unstoppable. We became the most social species on our planet. Packs, Varthek said. Like the Kresh hunters. Similar, but different. Kresh packs have a leader, and everyone follows. Human groups are more flexible. We share knowledge. We teach each other. We build on what others discovered. Each generation knows more than the last. Skrell hissed. You speak of yourself like you're still prey. Yet you've conquered your own planet. We didn't conquer it, Tay said. We learned to live on it. Even the animals that once hunted us, we studied them until we understood them. Some we avoided. Some we tamed. Some became our companions. Tamed, Varthex asked. Turned from enemies into allies. There were wolves that hunted us. Over time, we domesticated them. Now we call them dogs, and they're humanity's best friends. The king stared at Tay for a long moment. You turned your predators into pets. We turned them into family, Tay corrected. There's a difference. Varthex stood abruptly. He walked to the edge of his dais, looking down at Tay. This is why you don't fear us. You think you can understand us, study us, perhaps even tame us. No, Tay said calmly. We don't want to tame anyone. We just want to go home. But while we're here, we might as well learn. It's what we do. The king's expression was unreadable. Finally, he spoke. Double the guards on their quarters. No one speaks to the humans unless necessary. No more conversations. Tay bowed his head. As you wish. As he was led away, Tay allowed himself a small smile. The king was rattled. He understood now that the humans weren't just sitting in their rooms waiting to be released. They were watching, learning, understanding Dodd, and that made Varthex nervous. Back in their quarters, the team gathered. Tay told them about the conversation. About the king's reaction. He's afraid, Una said. Not afraid, Sio corrected. It was the first time he'd spoken in days. Uncertain. Predators hate uncertainty. Good, Tay said. Uncertainty makes people think. And thinking people make better choices than reactive ones. Outside their doors, 12 guards now stood watch instead of 6. They had orders not to talk to the prisoners. But orders couldn't stop them from wondering about these strange, soft creatures who watched them with curious eyes. 3 weeks had passed since the humans arrived. The palace felt different now, though most Dracther couldn't explain why. It was like a subtle vibration in the air, a feeling that something had shifted. The guards felt it most strongly. They rotated shifts more frequently now, every 4 hours instead of 6. No one wanted to stand watch outside the human quarters for too long. When asked why, the guards gave vague answers. The prisoners were too quiet, too calm, too observant. They watch us, one guard told another during a shift change. Every time we walk past, I feel their eyes on me, tracking, learning. They're locked in rooms, the other guard replied. What can they do? I don't know. That's what bothers me. It was true. The humans didn't do anything threatening. They asked for books and were given data tablets about Dracther history. They asked for exercise equipment and were given basic weights. They asked for art supplies and were given materials to draw with. They were model prisoners. Perfectly polite. perfectly cooperative. That was exactly what made everyone nervous. Jiho had stopped talking to the guards, following the king's orders. But he had already made his connections. Young Kreth still nodded to him when passing. Others had started to recognize the humans as individuals, not just a group of aliens. Myra had completed her acoustic mapping of the palace. She could now identify the location of any room by the way sounds echoed through the walls. She knew where the armory was, where the royal chambers were, where the docking bays were located. Yuna had observed enough interactions to understand the palace's social hierarchy. She knew which nobles had influence, which commanders had the king's ear, which guards were ambitious, and which were content. Hannah had been sketching. The guards thought she was drawing landscapes from the window. In reality, she was diagramming Drakthar anatomy, bone structure, muscle groups, weak points. Not for violence, for understanding. Knowledge was never wasted. They had become the one guard came to with questions. Not often, and never officially. But a guard with a pulled muscle might pause near the window. They might mention that heat and rest would help. The next day, the guard would be moving better. "Why do you help us?" One guard finally asked. "We are your jailers." Day looked up from his book. "You're also people. People who feel pain. Why wouldn't I help if I can?" "It makes no sense. We conquered your ship. You did your job," they said. "I don't blame a soldier for following orders. Besides, healing is what I do. Doesn't matter who needs it." These small interactions created tiny cracks in the wall between captors and captives. Nothing dramatic. Nothing obvious. Just small moments of recognition that maybe these humans weren't so different. Maybe they were people too. Seok remained the mystery. He rarely spoke. He never drew attention to himself. But he watched everything with dark, patient eyes. The guards found him the most unsettling. The others were friendly, curious, warm. Seok was cold and calculating. He reminded them of a hunter waiting in tall grass. On day 22, everything changed. A courier arrived from the outer territories. He brought news that spread through the palace like fire. House Dremon, one of the great noble families, had issued a formal challenge to King Varthex's rule. The reason was simple. The king had grown weak. He kept strange aliens as pets. He spent time talking to prey creatures instead of leading conquests. He had become soft. Commander Skrull brought the news to Varthex in the throne room. Tay and his crew heard about it from the increased activity outside their quarters. Guards rushing past. Raised voices. The clatter of weapons being prepared. "Something's happening," Myra said, ear pressed to the door. "Political crisis," Yuna guessed. Listen to the tone. That's not military alert. That's panic. She was right. In the throne room, King Varthex read the formal challenge. His claws tore small scratches into the bone armrest of his throne. "Lord Dremon challenges my strength," Varthex said quietly. "He sends his champion to fight me in the arena of ascension." "You will crush him, my king," Skrull said, "as you have crushed all challenges before." Dremon's champion is Karvix the Destroyer. Young, strong, undefeated in 43 battles. You are stronger. "I am older," Varthex corrected. "My victories are many, but time is not kind to warriors. Karvix fights with the strength of youth. I fight with the wisdom of age. In a battle of pure strength, age loses." Skrull looked uncomfortable. "Then we refuse the challenge. Call it illegal. Have Dremon arrested. And prove his point that I've grown weak?" Varthex shook his head. "No, I will fight. I will win. Or I will die honorably. And if you die, what happens to the humans?" Varthex's eyes turned toward the direction of the East Wing, where the humans were kept. "Dremon has made his position clear. He believes I waste resources on curiosities. If he wins, the humans will be executed, publicly, as proof of his strength. Skrell said nothing. He had never liked the humans, but execution of unarmed prisoners seemed wasteful. How long do I have? Varthex asked. 3 days. The challenge must be answered within 5 days, and you'll need time to prepare. Then we have 3 days, Varthex said. Leave me. I must think. That evening, something unprecedented happened. King Varthex himself came to the human quarters. No announcement. No formal procession. Just the king and 2 guards, standing outside the locked doors. When the guards opened them, Varthex had to duck to enter. His massive frame filled the doorway. The humans stood quickly, but didn't bow or cower. They simply waited, respectful but not submissive. I need to speak with your leader, Varthex said. We don't really have a leader, Tay said. But I'm usually the one who talks first. Will that work? Varthex gestured to the guards. Wait outside. Close the door. The guards hesitated, but obeyed. The door closed, leaving the king alone with 6 humans in a locked room. It was either a sign of great confidence or great desperation. You said humans were prey, Varthex began. Hunted by larger, stronger creatures. How did you survive? Tay studied the king's face. There was tension there, worry. Something had changed. We survived by being smarter than the things that hunted us. Be specific. We learned patterns. Where predators hunted, when they rested, what they feared. We used tools to make ourselves more dangerous. We worked in groups to protect each other. And we ran when we needed to run. Running is cowardice. Running is survival, Tay corrected. Dead heroes don't protect their families. Living warriors do. Varthex turned to look out the window. His reflection in the glass showed a tired warrior, not a mighty king. I am being challenged. A fight to the death in 3 days. Who's challenging you? A younger warrior. Stronger. Faster. He fights like I fought 30 years ago, when I took this throne from the previous king. Hannah spoke up. What happens if you lose? I die. House Dremon takes power, and you are all executed as proof of the new king's strength. The room was quiet for a moment. So we have a shared interest in you winning, Tay said. Yes. Varthex looked at Tay directly. You said humans learn to survive against stronger predators. How? What did you do that made you more than prey? We learned that strength isn't everything, Seok said. Everyone turned to look at him. He rarely spoke, but when he did, people listened. A bear is stronger than a human. A tiger is faster. A crocodile has better weapons. But humans killed all of them when we needed to. How? Strategy, understanding, patience. We didn't fight bears head-on. We trapped them. We learned their behavior and used it against them. We made them predictable. Varthex's eyes narrowed. You're saying I should fight dishonorably. No, Tay said. Honor is important. But there's honor in intelligence, too. Your challenger expects you to fight like you did 30 years ago. He's studied your old battles, learned your style. He's preparing to face that warrior. So? So don't be that warrior, Yuna said. Be something new. Something he hasn't prepared for. The king looked at each human in turn. They stood together, these small, weak creatures. And yet they had survived in a universe full of things that could destroy them. Maybe there was something to learn from that. Tell me how, Varthex said. Tell me how prey defeats predators. The humans exchanged glances. Then Tay nodded. All right, he said. But you have to understand, this isn't about fighting harder. It's about fighting smarter. Are you willing to learn from prey? Varthex's talons clenched and unclenched. It went against everything he had been taught. Everything he believed. But he was running out of options. Teach me, he said. They talked through the night. The humans explained concepts foreign to Dracthyr thinking. Misdirection. Conservation of energy. Psychological warfare. Using an opponent's strength against them. He's younger and has more stamina, Myra explained. So you don't try to outlast him. You make him waste his energy while you conserve yours. Make him chase you, Jiho added. Make him work harder than you do. Every missed strike tires him. Every wasted movement costs him. Watch his patterns, Yuna said. Everyone has tells. Little movements before they strike. Learn his tells, and you'll know what he's going to do before he does it. And when he's tired, Seok said quietly, when he's frustrated and sloppy, that's when you strike. Not before. Patience is a weapon. Day pulled out his sketches. Hannah and I have been studying Dracthyr anatomy. There are vulnerable points. Not dishonorable targets, just places where a precise strike does more damage than a powerful one. The Arena of Ascension was carved from black stone at the heart of the capital city. It was ancient, older than the current dynasty, older than the memory of most living Dracthyr. Every king for the last 2,000 years had either fought here to claim the throne or defended their right to keep it. The arena floor was stained dark from centuries of bloodshed. The walls rose high on all sides, lined with seats for thousands of spectators. Above, the sky was a deep purple, 3 moons visible even in daylight. Tay and his crew were brought to the arena in chains. Not because they were dangerous, but because it was traditional. All prisoners witnessed challenge fights. It reminded them of Dracthyr's strength, Dracthyr power. They were placed in a special section reserved for condemned prisoners. The irony wasn't lost on them. If Varthex lost, they would die. These might be the last hours of their lives. Beautiful architecture, Jiho said, looking around the arena. Shame about the whole possible execution thing. Focus, Seok said quietly. Watch the crowd. Learn. The arena filled quickly. Thousands of Dracthyr took their seats, scales gleaming in the light. Nobles in the upper sections, warriors in the middle, common citizens below. Everyone wanted to see this fight. Challenges to the king were rare and always spectacular. Lord Drennan sat in the place of honor opposite the king's box. He was an older Dracthyr, his scales faded to gray with age. But his eyes were sharp and calculating. This was a political move, not a personal vendetta. He saw weakness and exploited it. Beside him sat Karvix the Destroyer. Karvix was massive, even by Dracthyr standards. His scales were a deep crimson, rare among his species. He wore minimal armor, just enough to be legal, not enough to slow him down. His claws had been sharpened to points. His teeth gleamed when he smiled, which he did often. He was confident, almost playful. He's enjoying this, Hana observed. He's never lost, Yuna said. He thinks this will be easy. Good, Tay replied. Overconfidence is a weakness. King Varthex entered from the opposite side. The crowd's reaction was mixed. Some cheered, loyal to their king. Some were silent, waiting to see if he deserved their loyalty. Some hissed, already backing the challenger. Varthex wore traditional combat armor. Unlike Karvix, he was fully protected. Chestplate, arm guards, leg armor. It was heavier, more restrictive. But it followed the old ways, the honorable ways. The two combatants met at the center of the arena. An ancient Dracthyr priest, scales white with age, stood between them. This is a challenge of ascension, the priest announced, his voice amplified to fill the arena. Combat to the death or submission. No weapons beyond natural ones. No outside interference. The victor claims the throne and all power that comes with it. Do you both accept these terms? I accept, Karvik said loudly. His voice was strong, eager. I accept, Varthek said quietly. The priest backed away. The crowd fell silent. For a moment, the only sound was wind whistling through the arena. Then the fight began. Carvex moved first, just as expected. He was young, aggressive, eager to prove himself. He charged forward with incredible speed, claws extended, jaws open. Varthex didn't meet the charge head-on. Instead, he stepped aside at the last moment. Carvex's claws raked empty air where the king had been standing a heartbeat before. The crowd murmured. That wasn't how Varthex usually fought. The old Varthex would have met strength with strength, clashing directly with his opponent. Carvex spun, faster than seemed possible for something his size. He lashed out with his tail, a whip-like strike aimed at Varthex's legs. Again, Varthex moved. Not far, just enough. The tail struck stone instead of flesh, the impact echoing through the arena. He's making Carvex work, Myra whispered. Making him waste energy on attacks that don't land. Exactly what we talked about, they said. Carvex attacked again. And again. Each strike was powerful enough to kill. Each one missed by the smallest margin. The younger warrior was faster, stronger, more aggressive. But Varthex was moving with purpose. With patience dotting the crowd, some Dracther began to boo. This wasn't the glorious combat they expected. The king was running, dodging, avoiding. He fights like prey. Someone shouted. Lord Dremon smiled. This was going exactly as planned. Whether Varthex won or lost the physical fight didn't matter if he lost the crowd's respect. But in the prisoners section, the humans saw something else. He's learning Carvex's patterns, Seok said. Watch. 3 quick strikes, then a pause. Carvex does it every time. It was true. Carvex had a rhythm. Strike, strike, breathe. It was instinctive, probably drilled into him during training. Most opponents wouldn't survive long enough to notice. But Varthex wasn't trying to win quickly. He was trying to understand. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. Carvex was breathing harder now. Sweat made his scales shine. He had landed one minor blow, a scratch across Varthex's shoulder. But he had thrown 100 strikes to get it. Varthex, meanwhile, had barely attacked at all. He was still fresh, still calm. Fight me. Carvex roared. Stop running and fight. I am fighting, Varthex replied. Just not the way you expected. This enraged Carvex further. He abandoned strategy entirely and charged with pure fury. His claws tore into stone. His jaws snapped at air. He was a whirlwind of violence. And Varthex simply wasn't there. The crowd's mood began to shift. Some started to understand. This wasn't cowardice. This was strategy. The king was fighting smart, not just strong. 15 minutes. 20. Carvex was visibly tiring now. His strikes were slower, less precise. He was frustrated, angry, exhausted from chasing an opponent who refused to engage the way he wanted. Varthex, reading the moment, finally attacked. It wasn't a powerful blow. It was a precise one. Carvex threw a wild right claw strike. Varthex ducked under it and drove his own claws into the exposed joint between Carvex's arm and chest plate, one of the vulnerable points they had identified. Carvex roared in pain. His right arm went partially limp. The crowd gasped. Var to Hex didn't press the advantage. He backed away again, letting Carvex recover. This wasn't about overwhelming his opponent. It was about wearing him down, strike by careful strike. Carvex was breathing in ragged gasps now. His confidence was gone, replaced by desperation. He had thought this would be easy. He had prepared to face the legendary Varthex, the unstoppable warrior king. He hadn't prepared to face this patient, calculating fighter who seemed to know his every move before he made it. He's watching my tells, Carvex realized aloud. You're reading me. Yes, Varthek said. Humans taught me that. They taught me many things. He gestured toward the prisoner section. Thousands of eyes turned to look at the 6 humans sitting in chains. Those weak creatures taught you? Karvix laughed bitterly. You take lessons from prey? I take lessons from survivors, Varthex corrected. They survived on a world full of predators. Do you know how? Not by being strong, by being smart, by adapting, by learning. He circled Karvix slowly. The younger warrior tried to track him, but he was too tired, too hurt. You studied my old battles, Varthex continued. You learned how I fought when I was your age. You prepared for that warrior. But I'm not that warrior anymore. I'm something new. Something that learned from prey. Karvix lunged one final time, putting all his remaining strength into a desperate attack. Varthex was ready. He had seen this pattern before. 3 strikes, then a big finishing move. It was so predictable that he sidestepped the attack, grabbed Karvex's extended arm, and used the younger warrior's momentum against him. It was a technique Jiho had described, something from human martial arts. Redirect force instead of meeting it. Karvix crashed into the arena wall with enough force to crack stone. He tried to rise, but his body wouldn't respond. 25 minutes of wasted energy had left him empty. His right arm was useless. His legs trembled with exhaustion. Varthex walked over calmly. He placed one foot on Karvex's chest, claws at his throat. Submit, Varthex said. Or die. Your choice. Karvix looked up at the king, at the crowd, at Lord Dremen, who had promised him glory. I submit, he whispered. The crowd erupted. Some cheered. Some booed. But everyone was talking. This fight would be remembered for generations. The day King Varthex learned new tricks from humans. Varthex removed his foot and helped Karvix stand. It was traditional. Show mercy to a defeated opponent who submitted. The younger warrior would live, though his reputation was shattered. The priest approached. King Varthex is victorious. The challenge is defeated. The throne remains his by right of combat. Varthex raised his arms, acknowledging the crowd. But his eyes were on the humans. Later, after the crowd dispersed and the arena emptied, Varthex came to the prisoner section personally. Guards unlocked the chains. You saved my life, Varthex said simply. We gave you ideas, Tay replied. You did the fighting. Ideas are weapons too. Perhaps the most powerful weapons. The king looked at each human. I have a question. You knew teaching me might keep me in power, keep you imprisoned longer. Why help? Because the alternative was death, Hana said. This way, we're still alive. Still hoping. That word again. Hope. Varthex seemed to taste it, considering. Humans hope. Drakther conquer. Different philosophies. Maybe not so different, Una suggested. Hope drives us to survive. Survival requires conquest sometimes. Just different approaches to the same goal. Varthex nodded slowly. Come, we will talk more. Not as prisoner and captor, as... He struggled for the word. The month passed like water flowing downhill, inevitable, natural, transforming everything it touched. The humans sent their message home on the second day. Earth received it with confusion, then relief, then cautious hope. The diplomatic corps wanted to send a fleet immediately. Tay convinced them to wait. Let this experiment play out. Let them see what 6 humans could accomplish with patience instead of firepower. The palace changed first. Small things at first, barely noticeable. Guards who used to stand rigid now asked questions. Servants who never spoke to nobles began to offer opinions. The rigid hierarchy started to bend, just slightly. Jiho spent his days with the palace engineers. They were brilliant at building things that lasted, terrible at adapting when situations changed. He taught them human concepts: modularity, redundancy, flexibility in design. You build everything to last forever, he explained to a senior engineer named Thros. But what if forever changes? Better to build things that can adapt. Thros was skeptical at first. Dracthyr engineering was proven across centuries. Why change it? Then Jiho showed him a simple demonstration. He took apart a human datapad and rebuilt it with different components. Same function, different parts. The Dracthyr watched in fascination. Your tools only work one way, Jiho said. Ours can work many ways. Which is stronger? Thros had no answer. But 3 days later, he started redesigning the palace's energy grid with modular components. Myra worked with the military commanders. They were used to overwhelming force, direct assault, numerical superiority. She introduced them to alternative thinking. What if you can't win by attacking? She asked Commander Skrull during a strategy session. Then you get more warriors, Skrull replied. What if you can't get more warriors? Then you lose. Or, Myra said, pulling up a holographic map, you make the enemy not want to fight. You cut supply lines. You isolate leaders. You make victory too expensive. War isn't just combat. It's logistics, psychology, timing. Skrull hated the idea. It felt dishonorable. But when Myra ran simulations showing how a smaller force could defeat a larger one using these tactics, it couldn't argue with results. Humans have fought many wars, Myra said quietly. We learned that winning isn't about being strongest. It's about making the other side decide fighting isn't worth it. Yuna became the cultural bridge. She spent time with nobles, servants, guards, citizens, anyone who would talk. She learned the deep history of the Dracthyr. Not the conquest history, but the stories they told their children. The songs they sang. The fears they never spoke aloud. You're a warrior culture, she told Varthex one evening. But that's not all you are. I've heard your poetry. It's beautiful. Haunting. Why hide it? Poetry is weakness, Varthex said automatically. Then he paused. Or so we're taught. By who? The king had no answer. It was just the way things were. Warriors didn't write poetry. Conquerors didn't sing songs. Humans are warriors too, Yuna said. We fought countless wars. And we also write poetry about the horror of it. About loss. About hope. Being a warrior doesn't mean forgetting you're a person. She introduced Varthex to human literature. Stories of war and peace. Poems about sacrifice and love. Songs about longing for home. The king read them late into the night, discovering a language for feelings he'd never acknowledged. Hana worked with the medical corps. Dracthyr medicine was advanced in surgery and combat trauma. But they knew nothing about mental health, nutrition optimization, or preventive care. You fix injuries after they happen, she observed. Why not prevent them? How do you prevent combat? I mean physical injuries from poor training technique. Dietary imbalances that weaken bones. Psychological stress that impairs judgment. The concept was revolutionary. Dracthyr simply expected warriors to be tough enough to handle everything. Those who broke were considered weak. Hana taught them that minds need care just like bodies. That stress accumulates. That warriors perform better when they're mentally healthy, not just physically strong. The medical corps resisted at first. Then they tried her methods with a group of young trainees. Injuries decreased by 30%. Performance improved across every metric. Data was persuasive. Day continued his quiet work, the same as he'd done as a prisoner. He listened. He cared. He treated pain without judgment. But now guards came to him openly, not in secret. Why you care about us? A veteran warrior asked him. Your job is done. You're free. You could ignore us. Good, they agreed. But why would I? You're people who hurt. I can help. That's enough reason. The warrior was silent for a moment. No one has ever said that to me before. Then they should have, they replied simply. These small acts of compassion rippled outward. Guards who felt heard became more patient. Warriors who felt valued became more thoughtful. The entire palace atmosphere shifted from rigid hierarchy to something more flexible, more human. SEOK remained quiet and observant as always. But he spent time with the intelligence services, the spies, the shadow operators who kept the Empire running behind the scenes. You gather information to control people, he said during a meeting with Intelligence Chief Vex. That is our function. Information can also free people, make them smarter, help them make better choices. Vex's eyes narrowed. You suggest we share intelligence with common citizens? I suggest that educated populations are more stable than ignorant ones. Humans learned this the hard way. We had empires that controlled through ignorance. They all fell. It was a dangerous conversation. But Vex was practical above all else. If shared information created stability, it was worth considering. Seok provided case studies from Earth history. Empires that fell from internal rebellion. Societies that thrived through education. The data was clear. King Varthex watched all of this unfold. He saw his empire changing from the inside out. Not through conquest or force, but through ideas. Through questions. Through 6 small beings who simply refused to accept that things had to stay the way they'd always been. On day 23, Lord Dremon requested an audience. He entered the throne room with his usual retinue. But his posture was different. Less aggressive. More careful. You wish to speak with me? Varthex asked. I came to apologize, Dremon said. The words clearly pained him. My challenge was premature. You are still strong. The fight proved that. The fight proved I can adapt, Varthex corrected. That's different than strength. The humans changed you. The humans taught me. There's a difference there, too. Dremon looked uncomfortable. The Empire is changing. Your guards talk to servants. Engineers redesign systems that have worked for centuries. Even the military studies. Retreat tactics. He said the last part with disgust. And? Varthex prompted. And I don't know if these changes are wise. Or safe. It was an honest admission. Varthex appreciated honesty. Come, the king said, rising from his throne. Let me show you something. He led Dremon to the palace's eastern terrace. Below, in the training grounds, young warriors were practicing. But they weren't just fighting. They were talking between bouts, discussing technique, teaching each other. Watch, Varthex said. A larger trainee faced a smaller one. In the old way, size would win. The larger warrior would overwhelm the smaller through pure force. But the smaller warrior used technique, footwork, timing, redirection. After 3 minutes, the larger warrior was on the ground, tapping submission. Both warriors helped each other up, discussed what worked, what didn't, laughed together. That's not how we trained, Dremon said quietly. No. In our day, the larger one would have humiliated the smaller, made him feel weak. Maybe the smaller one would quit, and we'd lose a potentially excellent warrior because we only valued size. And now? Now we value intelligence with strength. Both warriors improve. Both become better. The Empire gets 2 excellent fighters instead of 1 brute and 1 failure. Dremon watched for a long time. The humans did this? The humans showed me that prey survives by adapting. I'm applying that lesson to warriors, to leadership, to everything. And if it fails, then we adapt again. That's the point. Dremon nodded slowly. He didn't like it. Change was uncomfortable, but he couldn't argue that results were already showing. "I won't challenge you again," he said finally. "I know." "How do you know?" "Because you're smart enough to learn from failure," Varthek said. "Just like I did." On day 28, Tay gathered his crew in what had become their regular meeting room. They sat around a table, drinking a Drakther beverage that was almost but not quite like coffee. "2 days left," Jiho said. "We need to decide." "The king kept his promise," Hana noted. "Our ship is ready. We can leave any time." "But have we accomplished what we set out to do?" Yuna asked. Myra pulled up a data tablet. "I've been tracking changes. Guard rotation patterns are more flexible. Medical requests are up 30%. Combat injuries down 25%. The engineering corps has submitted 47 new designs in 3 weeks. They usually submit 5 per year. Cultural shifts," Yuna added. "Poetry readings in the warrior barracks. Music in the dining halls. People asking questions instead of just following orders. The intelligence services are piloting an education program," Siok said. "It's small, but it's starting." "And Varthek's himself," they noted. "He asked me yesterday about mental